Hi guys. Well, I will be slightly disappointed if nobody managed to guess this week's weapon, because the silhouette of this thing is pretty distinctive. But if you don't know it, you don't know it. You might know it if you're a science fiction movie fan. This was the sidearm of the Colonial Marines in Aliens. Or if you're a gamer who played Resident Evil 2, this setup shows up in that. And this is another one of those guns that it has more of a life in popular culture than it ever achieved in real life. So what is it? It's the Heckler & Koch VP-70. VP for Volkspistole, People's Pistol, and 70 for 1970, when the first examples were made, as far as I know. Now, Volkspistole might ring a bell, and that's probably because of this, or one of the other wartime German, Second World War Volkspistole designs, because there were several. This is one of the Mauser offerings. And the whole idea here was there was a war on. This was a cheap, easy to make sidearm that you could rush out and replace all of your Lugers and P38s with. So in that sense, it was a people's pistol. It was cheap enough that in theory, depending on the situation, you could manufacture enough to equip the population with them. Well, the same basic concept, in a very different context, re-emerged in 1970, when three designers at Heckler & Koch, the company having some ties back to the old Mauser company, decided to revisit the concept, not to arm the whole population, but as something that would be affordable, or at least cheap to make. So they went from stamped steel and blocks of solid steel to the first production polymer framed pistol. This thing is noteworthy in that respect. And a relatively simple trigger mechanism, slide construction, and so forth. Now, Forgotten Weapons has a couple of great videos on this. Go back and check those for the technical side. The Historical Firearms blog also covers this in some detail. The main reason I chose this for this series is that there are a couple of details that I've picked up on that I haven't seen really talked about elsewhere, and I do mean details. Before we get to those, though, the other piece lying on the table here, this is the VP-70Z for civil. So this is the civilian version. And I think the phrase Ian used was elephant in the room. Well, the elephant in the room is this bit on the VP-70M, as it was later renamed. So in 1975, HK started offering the civil version, but in the sales catalogues, they're the same gun. They both just say VP-70 on them. So they hadn't yet finalized a marking that says VP-70Z. And the significance of it being civilian is that because it can't take the shoulder stock, it also cannot go automatic. It can't fire bursts of fire. It's just a semi-automatic pistol. Because it's the stock that activates the mechanism that isn't even present in this, it's present in this, that makes it fire 3 rounds extremely rapidly, which we've demonstrated for you. So rapidly, like over 2,000 rounds per minute, that they sound almost like one echoing shot. So, civil version, offered from 1975, and then they change the markings. This becomes, at some point after that, the VP-70M and becomes marked up as such. This one is too early for that. Slightly complicating matters are the two different designs, which I suspect you've already spotted. We go from this version with the sort of oval insert in the slide, the very stylized 70s branding on the side here, and finger grooves on the grip. So a slightly more convoluted design for the frame, to the sort of product improved version where it's made well, cheap, even cheaper, basically. So no two-piece or multi-piece construction here. They have made the markings a lot more basic. They don't have that sort of script flourish on there. That's a stylistic choice, not really a production one, but nonetheless. So you can see when you put them side by side, they are different. And it's not because one's the M and one's the Z. Both originally look like this. Both eventually look like this, just to explain that. So just to recap how, from a user point of view, the stock works. We've got the attachment point on the bottom here. So this is the magazine catch. So just to demonstrate that quickly, you'd press that up. It's an old-fashioned continental style heel release, which is very awkward to operate from this angle. There we go. Press that in, rip out the magazine, and it's so tight in this pistol that you absolutely do have to rip it out every time. It doesn't drop free like a modern pistol magazine. And that's 18 rounds, which is not remarkably high capacity for 1970. When you think the Browning High Power, popular at the time, was 13 rounds. And even when the Glock comes in 1982, that's 1 round less than this. So high capacity, in theory cheap. It has some drawbacks, as you'll see from the other people that have covered this. Trigger's really not great. It's blowback, so recoil is maybe not as good as it could be. And there are some other ergonomic issues, but we won't dwell on that. We're here to pick up a few other pieces. So let's quickly cover how the holster attaches, or detaches in this case. So the catch is at the rear. We press that down. Off comes the buttstock, which is also the holster. Pop it open, and in slides your pistol. Close it up. It's not just a case, it's also a holster. Now other sources mention that there was a holster type arrangement and this is the slot for it. That's absolutely true. The detail of how it works is not necessarily what you might think. It's not like a it's not like a lightsaber suspension system with a round disc that goes into this slot. It's actually, and here is the holster arrangement as it was supplied originally. The slot accepts this long lug here, more like a bayonet lug, and then this press catch thing that's round, it locks into this semicircle here. So to demonstrate, slide straight on, nice and easy. And then to remove it, you press the button and slide it off. Very straightforward. Can attach either side for left or right-handed users. This system of straps is an absolute spaghetti junction nightmare. I believe what they've done here is just supply all the straps you might ever need for thigh mounting, waist mounting, presumably using the thick loops here, or the wide loops here, and maybe even a shoulder holster arrangement. I think there's no documentation on this. Anyone from H&K, I didn't have time to reach out to you before this, or anyone that knows, please let us know in the comments. And if you don't know, feel free to speculate, because I didn't want to start undoing all this and attempting to see how it works. But that's how the plate works, and it is curved to fit your hip or your thigh. So an interesting system, I think. And to reverse the process, open it up, draw your pistol. You then have to obviously slide, and this is the reason for the quick release plate holster arrangement, is you then slide this off that, and you can deploy it hopefully while bullets aren't flying at your head. Drop the pistol onto the stock, locks in place, and then as you'll have seen elsewhere, the selector switch is by default at 1, obviously single shot, and then when you move it to 3 rounds, up pops this sprung blade here that interacts with the trigger mechanism in this slide and essentially disconnects the trigger and lets the slide come back 3 times for 3 shots and then disconnects. So, no safety, no manual safety on this. It's just blanked off with this sort of nubbin here. The civil version absolutely does have a standard crossbolt safety that shows red for fire and presses in to disable the trigger. So not entirely sure why the M version, or this is pre-M, but the military version, Militar, why that doesn't have a safety at all. Again, answers in the comments if you can speculate as to why. Something else I noticed, I'm sure I'm not the first, but that I wanted to mention, the sights. Now, other people have commented on this weird front sight. It is very, very wide, and it has a gutter in the middle of it, or a slot in the middle of it, that forms a sort of shadow front sight. That much is known widely. But from what I can tell, this is actually intended to accommodate the shoulder stock. So when you have the thing shouldered, from your eye's point of view, that whole wide front sight is your front sight post. You ignore the shadow in the middle, you just look at the whole front sight, it fills the rear notch, equal height, equal light, and you can shoot the thing accurately. When you go to pistol mode, and I can't actually do that when it's on automatic or burst fire mode, you have to put it on single shot. Excellent safety feature. That then reconnects the detaching latch so that you can remove the stock. Another fascinating detail of this weapon. Anyway, back to the sights. When you're pushing this out at arm's length, suddenly that middle notch becomes your front sight, and the shiny wide surface here you just ignore. So it's essentially two different sights in one. The middle groove for use as a handgun, and the whole thing for use when it's much closer to your eye, and the whole front sight appears to fill that rear notch. Very, very clever bit of engineering. Well, as we had a VP70 available for firing, which you've seen being shot already, I didn't want to walk away and not admit to just how absolutely terrible my very first effort firing one actually was, because it's quite an important point for the point of a machine pistol. So they've made this thing fire very, very fast, over 2,000 rounds per minute, 3 rounds. That's great, that limits the possible spread of the 3 shots, but it doesn't let you lean into the gun and bring it back down. I think you'll see something similar from Ian at Forgotten Weapons when he tried this as well. So I think what we're seeing here, tremendous vertical dispersion, very good laterally. It's not going off the target laterally, but vertically it's all over the place. So I was aiming down here, sort of roughly at the bottom of the target, knowing that it wasn't going to be very precise. And so one of the first rounds from my several 3-round bursts struck here. Another one will have ended up about halfway up the 2 targets. And then the third one will have been somewhere up on the top target. And then rinse and repeat for all of those bursts. And yes, you could get better at this if you practiced. I mean, this is awful. This is partly me. But it's also an inherent flaw in this concept. You can limit, burst limiters are great. They mean I didn't shoot the ceiling, which is brilliant. But you can't, I mean, and okay, this is going to be highly effective. This is person sized still. You're going to do what you need to do, but it's less accurate than a musket at this range anyway. So did H&K succeed in their attempt to reinvent the Volkspistola concept? In concept, yes. They pioneered, or they invented various detail features we've looked at today that are fascinating to people like us. They pioneered the polymer frame, as mentioned. Did it, I think, over a decade before Glock did, 12 years before Glock did, and that proved to be the way forward. Super high capacity. Now, admittedly, that's because they were thinking of this as an emergency machine pistol, as well as just a pistol. Otherwise, they might not have incorporated 18 rounds, but still, high capacity, polymer frame, 9mm. It's so nearly the success story of the Glock, but it's clunky, awkwardly balanced. The trigger's not great. The burst fire, although one of the best ways that this has ever been implemented, for everything from the Schnellfeuer to the Glock 18, the Beretta 93R, Stechkin, this is well up there. Even so, who actually needs this function? And the answer is very few people. Certainly not the people who can't even buy it anyway, because this is the military version. So for all of those reasons, this does become a bit of a footnote. I'll always remember it as the Aliens pistol. That's just me. So this is a sort of, it's one that's made it to production status. I don't know how many were made. I believe they stopped making them in 1995. So it did have a fair production run. Most of that would have been taken up with the civilian version. And presumably the biggest market there was the United States. But yeah. So not a failure by any means, but not the huge success story that the next polymer frame pistol would turn out to be. Thank you as always for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. We do have a range of social media accounts that you can follow. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also now there is a Royal Armouries Reddit account floating around in the ether. So if you'd like to follow that, you'll be able to make sure you see everything that we put out there from the collection and from the museum. We also have at the moment a relatively new book out called Treasures of the Royal Armouries. If you'd like to go and check that out as well, you're very welcome. And of course, you can come and visit one of our sites. You'll be very welcome. Thanks very much.